How's it going, YouTube? My name is Ninja7, your favorite WoW healing content creator. And guys, in today's video, I'm going to talk about the state of healing in World of Warcraft, specifically in Season 3. Because coming from Season 2, where it was kind of just like a crapshoot, we're kind of in a little mini golden era, if you were to ask me. Obviously, there are still some things that could be tweaked or just made better or improved. But for the most part, things are looking relatively pretty good right now. So in today's video, I have a lot of different things that we're going to talk about. I'm going to make it quick. I promise you guys this will not be another 30-minute video. I've pumped out a lot of those recently, but let's go ahead and jump into it. So I did poll my my Discord. I just asked them to, in one sentence, tell me what your opinion is on the state of healing. Me on Mistweaver, happy. Me on HPAL, sad. Casting spells is fun. Being mana starved is not. Totally true. Nerfs suck hard balls. I mean, look, people are going to get salty about nerfs, but guys, I promise you they were good. They were healthy for the overall state of the game, and we have landed on our feet, which is kind of made clear by Saphira here. I've improved at managing my mana tea usage, and I don't feel any different now than I did before, but it forced me to start working on things like mana tea that I had taken advantage of and not actually learned/owned my skills in. I totally agree. The first day of the nerfs to Mistweaver in particular and mana tea, I was very sad. Like you guys probably saw in my video, I was just like, man, mana sucks to manage, but it has made me a better overall player. So once again, I think we manage these nerfs very well. I enjoy it, but I think the mana issues add a lot of stress, which is kind of like the polar opposite of what I was just saying, but I still agree. This is across the board, and we will get into mana issues. I think some mana management is needed, but it should be relaxed somewhat. Jack had some good videos on this issue too. Too long didn't read is that one-shot mechanics are not fun. 100% agree. However, if you remember back in Season 2, the one-shot mechanics are kind of what made that season very unfun for myself and a lot of people. A lot of people dropped out of the game in Season 2, not just because it was Holy Paladin Summer, but just the one-shot mechanics were ridiculous. Season 1 and 2, you would people would get hit by just an unavoidable mechanic, get dropped down to 10% health, and you would have like no time at all to heal them up before they got hit by the next one that did the same amount of damage. It was very unfun. But nowadays, like, things will hit you down to like 30% health. People are tankier. Our spot healing is a lot better, and you have more time to heal them back up before that next 70% damage happens. So it just overall has been a lot less stressful, as you see here by a lot of these guys. But I do want to highlight just another comment. Lumian said, playing a mana management simulator is not healing. Now, obviously, mana management is part of healing, but yeah, what they're saying is like it is kind of just solely focused on mana right now. Like sometimes you just have to like not heal a mechanic, like just straight up AFK a mechanic so that you'll have more mana for the next one, and that feels very weird. But yeah, we'll get into all this. I just wanted to show off some of my Discord people because they had some good input. But let's go and start things off with Mythic Plus, and we're going to look at like two main things in Mythic Plus. First off, this is just the leaderboards. You see here it's ranked by score like IO, and it looks very healthy. Like it looks extremely healthy. If you remember in Season 2, which I call Holy Paladin Summer, 92 of the top 100 people were Holy Paladins. However, in our top 5, we have 3 different classes. Our top 10, we have 4 different classes. Our top 15, we have 5 different classes. And then in our top 30, we finally hit all 7. So very healthy. I mean, look at just the diversity of colors. Just overall, you can just blanket statement tell that it's pretty healthy in terms of balancing. You can come into a dungeon with almost like any spec, and you could theoretically get the job done. Whereas in seasons past, like certain healers just did not have the tools to survive certain mechanics. I think back to Mistweaver in particular last season, before they added Chi Cocoon, we just could not allow the group to survive certain mechanics. Like it was impossible, actually impossible. But now with all the, all the spot healing checks, all just the boosts that healing have gotten, and kind of the toned down nature of the incoming damage in Mythic Plus dungeons, it is more skill oriented because it is possible to actually survive a lot of mechanics that otherwise would not have been possible in season past. But like I said, it's skill intensive because, you know, you have to be able to do it. You have to be a good enough player. Whereas like before, that check wasn't even asked. You weren't asked, are you a good enough player to help your group sustain this? Because your group would not survive this amount of damage. So all in all, just the fact that you can take everything up to like a shaman and even a holy priest into these high-end keys, at least for now, and perform at a very top level. I mean, look at this, like Mega Set is one of the most cracked Mistweaver players on the planet, and she is underneath a holy priest. Not taking anything away from her, I'm just saying, like, the fact that a holy priest is that high up and they're kind of known as the lowest healer, the lowest performing healer, is a really good look, because usually the 7th or the last rank healer would probably not even crack the top 50. I mean, I can't think of the last time that we've seen all 7 in the top 50. Call me crazy, but I think it is very healthy to at least see some form of representation across the board. Now, the other question or the other topic that we're going to talk about is healer damage, because I feel like this always has to come up when you talk about Mythic Plus and meta and, you know, all the relevancy. When you talk about Mythic Plus healers, you do have to mention their damage. How much damage is possible for them to do? How much damage is realistic for them to do? And for the most part, you do see kind of like a big four. You do see your Disc Priest, your Evokers, your Druids, you know, the cat weaving playstyle, especially pre-nerf, but even after nerfs. And then you do see Mistweavers also popping up. So you do see the big four popping up in the big damage conversation, but you've probably already spotted it. There is a Holy Priest here, which is not known to do the best damage. There is a top one, but I guess it's because they did a plus 28, but and it's Roybin, let's be real. But there's a Holy Paladin in this conversation. Yes, that damage is very, very low compared to these others, but the fact that you can get through dungeons without having to put up insane damage. Let's scroll down here to where we see Jak. Jak here at the top, once again, having timed a 28, whereas everyone else is only timed and logged a plus 27. His DPS is a lot lower than this other Disc Priest. However, we've moved out of the world where healers had to maximize their damage into a world where we have to optimize our damage. And that is amazing. That leaves a lot more room for skill. Instead of just playing your healer as if it were a DPS spec as much as you can kind of shift back and forth, do what the group needs. I'm sure Jak was absolutely blasting damage when it was required or when there was downtime in the healing, and then just healing optimally when he needed to heal to keep the group alive. You know, spot heal the tank if you need to, instead of casting all of your DPS spells to cleave off of Atonement. It's a world where you don't have to put up 70,000 damage. You don't have to be, as a casual player, someone just doing a plus 20 or a plus 23, plus 25. You don't have to put up these insane 70,000 damage numbers or DPS numbers. You can put up a 40,000. You can even probably hop into a 20 and do actual 0 damage. I'm pretty sure I did a key earlier this week where our healer only had 60,000 damage combined, and that was from just applying their Holy Priest dot 2 or 3 times. It was kind of crazy. They were just spamming heals. And if you want to play that way, you can do that to a higher extent. Now, what attributes to that? Does it have anything to do with healer, tuning? To some extent, yes. Healers do good damage, but not like insane damage, except for maybe, Disc Priest and Resto Druid do very solid damage all the time. But also DPS players and tanks alike, they both do incredible damage. And with the help of an Augmentation Evoker now, their damage is pushed so high that the healer has a lot less pressure to be required to do this much damage. Now, obviously, if you want to push the top end keys, you will have to do these top end numbers of damage. But for most players, at anything less than plus 26s, plus 27s, the question to you will not be asked, hey, how much damage can you do? Unless you want it to. I mean, you could pump damage, or you could do what my Holy Priest and my key earlier this week did and just not even focus on damage. And that is healthy. That's healthy. If you want to optimize, you can. If you want to maximize min-max, you can. However, it's not required. It's not necessary. And that's great. That is great. And next up, let's go and talk about some raid balancing. So here we have the graph that is the raid healers, and this is just like a blanket statement in terms of throughput. So obviously I'm just going to go ahead and make the disclaimer, even though I don't think I have to at this point. Throughput is not everything. I mean, we were seeing holy priests, although they are clearly behind in the throughput department, we were seeing them in the race world first because of their utility. Disc priests, although they're not doing Mistweaver levels, they are probably the most popular at this point. Shamans, even though they're up here with Mistweavers putting out insane throughput, you're still seeing not as many people play them as we've seen in the past. You see down here only 8,000 logs or 8,000 parses compared to like Disc Priest. Where's Disc Priest? Right here, 18,000. So all in all, overall, it's pretty even. You see a lot of competition here in this middle pack. You see Mistweavers with a ton of throughput, like quite a bit more potential throughput than some of these other classes. Holy Priest with quite a bit less potential throughput. And I'm going to give you a flashbang warning. You see here at the bottom of my screen, I'm about to open Microsoft Paint. So I've drawn up a couple of graphs. These are obviously professional, but I want to talk about these a little bit. Now here we have kind of what we're seeing right now, this one on the left. And overall, it's very healthy. It's totally fine to have one at the bottom or one at the top be kind of slightly skewed or slightly stronger or weaker than the rest. But for the most part, what you want to look at here is where the general like group lies. And there's a lot of competition, a lot of evenness right here. You know, their medians are all pretty, you know, similar. There's just a lot of competition. That's great. You want to see that. That is what you want to care about the most. You also should not look at these two. These two, they're not necessarily outliers because they aren't, you know, outliers like this one. But they are, like I said, slightly weaker, slightly stronger. And you should not think that that's a bad thing. It actually is very healthy to always have a flavor of the month or one that is just slightly worse performing. Where this becomes an issue is if one stays at these levels for multiple seasons in a row, just making it like a no-brainer that you should play that. But why is it always good to have one as a flavor of the month and one, you know, or maybe two a flavor of the month, two not so flavor of the month? Well, it encourages diversity, not just of the meta, but of yourself, of each individual player. It encourages this discussion. Should I swap? Should I swap my main? Should I try out a new main for a season? Should I play the flavor of the month? There should always be that discussion to keep people keeping it fresh. Because I myself, I've played Mistweaver for a long time now, you know, one long period. And I've asked myself in the past, I've been like, this season alone, I was like, should I swap to Preservation Evoker? Obviously now I'm happy that I didn't, but it's always good to have that discussion because, you know, if I do get burnt out of Mistweaver, I don't want to feel stuck in Mistweaver. And on that same conversation, now that Mistweaver is toward the top or at the top, I am happy. I'm happy to play, even if I did come into the season burnt out on Mistweaver. It's just good. It's just good because it encourages you to try new classes and to keep your favorite class, in my case, Mistweaver Monk, obviously fresh. So this is good. Now this is a lot less good, this middle graph here, but you do want to see a general, you know, trend like this, an upward trend. You do want to see classes slightly better or worse than the other because like I said, it does encourage diversity, but this is not good. And this is not what we have because we do have something more like this line over here because like I said, there is a lot more competition. But in this one, having a clear tier system, this is not good because it does not encourage diversity. This graph here would encourage like 2 Mistweavers, a Shaman, and a Disc Priest, or, you know, some mixture of there, whereas these at the bottom would never be taken. But a graph like this one, which I'll go ahead and get rid of these lines, a graph like this one, you could take a Mistweaver and any of these 5. You could even have a Holy Priest and a Mistweaver, and then any 2 of these 5 again. So a graph like this, all in all, is just more, you know, diverse, is better than a graph like this. And then I'll briefly touch on this graph over here. If you have one that is like insanely high or just way higher than the other graphs, that's bad. Obviously, because you'll just see that class just dominate. Any raid group that has that class at the top will just perform better than groups that don't. If you have a Disc Priest, a Druid, an Evoker, and a Paladin, you will perform worse than any group that has a Mistweaver filling in any one of these 4 holes. So that is why you have seen these kind of gutting nerfs, or not gutting, because obviously Mistweaver's not gutted because we're still at the top, but you've seen these heavy-handed nerfs come our way because we didn't want this situation. This was bad, and as much as I would have loved playing a Mistweaver in this world, it's just better to exist in this world for the overall health of the game. But I do want to quickly talk about, or maybe this won't be quick, but I do want to talk about the mana issues that you saw people in my Discord mention. And I've taken the top log of each healer, this being Disc Priest, each healing spec of Smolderon Mythic, where they did not have an Innervate. And you can kind of see, normally you do want to land around 0%, like 0 to 10% by the time that a boss dies. You want to use as much mana as you can without running out. But what you're going to see is that a lot of healing specs right now do sit there and kind of drown. It's kind of like that meme of that girl drowning and just struggling to catch a breath. That's kind of what a lot of healers are doing in terms of mana. And I've talked about this in the past, but there are a lot of different ways that you can nerf healers. But when you nerf them by nerfing their mana as a resource, that is probably the least fun way to nerf a healer. If you care a lot about the player experience, that is easily the worst way that you can nerf a healer. Yes, it's probably a very effective way, as you're probably seeing on some logs or some, I'm sure you're experiencing it when you run out of mana on certain pools. It just is not fun. No healer enjoys having to AFK to get some mana back, or to play less efficiently in terms of throughput to save mana or reserve mana. But you see here, it is almost across the board. You see Holy Paladin, most Mistweavers can kind of manage because we do have Mana Tea, but Holy Paladins, Shamans especially, Disc Priests definitely, and who have I not mentioned, Evokers are pretty fine for the most part. Druids are hit or miss. This guy did not innervate himself, so already a team player. Shout outs to this guy. But you see they're ending the fight. The last few seconds is when they run out, and that's what you're kind of seeing across the board. But Holy Priests are fine. Basically, Holy Priests, some Druids. I've seen a lot of Druids kind of go a lot. But Holy Priests, Evokers, and kind of Mistweavers and Druids are fine on mana. The rest of the group is kind of drowning, struggling. Everyone is sitting at graphs like this. I'm sure you've experienced this, and this is not good. Maybe if one healer, like say Disc Priest, someone who is always casting, or Druids, someone who is always casting, if they were having mana issues, one class, then it becomes obvious a simple solution. You either don't take that class in your group, which sucks, or you just give them the Innervate, give them the source of magic, make sure that you have a Holy Priest alongside them, a Resto Shaman alongside them to give them back some mana. But in a world where every healer is struggling, unless you have 4 balanced Druids in your raid group, or unless you have a raid group that is an Evoker, a Holy Priest, a Druid, and like a Holy Paladin, then you're probably fighting for those Innervates, and that's just not fun. It's just like the issue with PI. You've seen a lot of changes come to PI because it's just not fun fighting over PI or certain classes getting it. At least nowadays, there's more of a clear answer which class should get PI. But as for Innervate, needing like 4 Innervates in certain raid groups is disgusting. And if you look at some of these top logs and you see just how many Innervates are required for some people to play the game, it's kind of disgusting. I mean, look at this guy. 4 Innervates and Amalgam 7th Spine. It's just 5 Innervates. And a lot of these people at the top you're going to see are the people that get Innervate. But what about, if you have a group that has like a 4 classes that all are very rough on mana, all struggle with mana, and 2 of you get Innervate, 2 of you don't, you're just going to see the 2 people that don't not perform well. And that is kind of the glaring issue that we're seeing right now. Your performance could be decided before the pool even starts. Are you going to be the one getting the Innervate? Are you the one who has Source of Magic? Or are you the one that doesn't have either of those things? And although a lot of this does come from good mana management, like look, this person putting up 400k HPS on Lardor with only 1 Innervate buff, still, it's the fact that this would not have been possible without that Innervate buff. Don't make it over half the healers are struggling with mana. Kind of limit it. Make it like 1 or 2 healers. Sure, they can struggle with mana, but when all of us are drowning, It's just not good. It's not fun. It becomes a pain point more than it becomes a balancing thing. And I'm sure I speak for a lot of us when I say that that is just a less enjoyable version of the game. Okay, I've talked about mana enough. I know I have enough tabs open, so I'll close a few of these. But let's go and talk about the last thing that I want to talk about, and that is melee healers. Now, there are ranged healers and there are melee healers, and a lot of people think that you can play them, the two melee healers, which are Holy Paladin, Mistweaver, as a ranged spec, and you can't. You could play them as if they were ranged, but you'll still be classified as a melee healer. Now, for a long time, it just was not the right thing to do this with either of the healer. You would see both healers have to be in melee in order to generate holy power, or in order to do any amount of healing, like in Shadowlands. In order to do any amount of healing, you had to be in melee, getting value off of ancient teachings. But when you look at logs nowadays for Holy Paladin and Mistweaver, we've kind of, in all of Dragonflight, we've kind of gone, like, both of us have felt like we've been in a good spot where you could play the melee playstyle, the full-on melee playstyle, and perform the best, or play the full-on caster playstyle and perform the best. But you could play the other alternative. If, say, the caster Mistweaver Monk is the better playstyle in raid, you could whip out an Ancient Teachings and Gingi build like nowadays in Season 3 and perform at a fine level. In fact, you see a lot of the top parses being played with Ancient Teachings instead of Cloud of Focus. And then same with Paladin in Season 2, where they could play an Avenging Crusader build and perform very well, or you could not play that playstyle. Except nowadays, I would argue Mistweaver is in a great spot. You could play a Tear of Mourning build and perform exceptionally well, like do insane healing. I think I saw a log where Swaggles did like 1 million total HPS, which is kind of insane with a Tear of Mourning build. And I think the only damage that they had on the boss was like a Cackling Jade Lightning. So overall, pretty funny that you can do that. Or you could play something like this other build that Panda Monk Boy, or I think Vor was kind of the one that led the charge on this build, where you play the normal casting playstyle, except you just play Ancient Teachings as well, and you use those powerful essence fonts that we had before the nerfs, now still kind of okay, and use those to get some good value out of those Rising Sun kicks that you're going to be doing. So all in all, Mistweaver is in a great spot because you can play that and be totally fine. But Holy Paladin is kind of where Mistweaver was last tier, or kind of where the Tear of Mourning build is right now, where they do not cast Crusader Strike at all. Basically, I've seen logs where you cast 0 Crusader Strikes. The only thing that is keeping them in melee range of the boss, is their consecration damage. Or if you have absolute downtime, you could cast a Crusader Strike if you wanted to. But how they're generating all of their holy power, which they barely even use nowadays with Word of Glory, is Holy Shock. Obviously, that's like where their tier set works, but also with like Flash of Light, like casted spells or holy lights. And it's so weird that they don't get their holy power from striking the boss as much anymore. They get it from casting. And it's so weird. But we had our Holy Paladin. We were doing a Mythic Naimu or Nimue the other day, and we needed another healer to kind of help out with the ranged heal. And someone offered that our Holy Paladin does it because they don't even need to be in melee. And I was just like, whoa, like what world do we live in? And you just will not see the Crusader striking, the Avenging Crusader build. You will not see it perform or even played at all, because this is just the better way to play. Why would you cast those spells when your casted heals that actually do healing generate you holy power to then get more healing with Word of Glory? So all in all, just a weird time to be a Holy Paladin. I think I know a lot of Holy Paladins that enjoy it, but I also know a lot of Holy Paladins that prefer the Avenging Crusader build, just like I know Mistweavers that prefer the caster build versus the ones that prefer the Ancient Teachings Gingi way of play. And I think the healthier way for these two specs to evolve and to grow is to have both of those playstyles for each spec be competitive, like they are in Mistweaver currently, like they were in Holy Paladin last season. So whatever the changes they've done for Mistweaver that have kind of leveled out these two playstyles a bit at least, or pushed them at least a little bit closer, I think we should see for Holy Paladin. Don't make a Venging Crusader 500% of the damage you do is converted to healing again, but push it up to 400. I think it's sitting at like 360%. Push it a little closer so you see both playstyles and the environment is healthy for both of those. But guys, I've talked enough about the state of healing. Overall, just amazing. It feels so good to heal this season. I hope that you guys are also enjoying the dungeons. The dungeon pool is amazing. Hopefully you're enjoying the raid. I absolutely love this raid. The bosses are sick and a lot of fun to heal. So guys, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, because I love to have a good discussion with you guys down below. And I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about the state of healing in Season 3 currently. But guys, I could talk all day. I love making this style video. But instead, I think I've said enough. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there and give a special shout out to the Patreons. These guys are the reason why the channel can exist, why I can even attempt to be a full-time YouTuber. So special thanks to you guys. You're amazing and you make this channel possible. And if you, the viewer, want to see your name alongside these guys, just check out the link down in the description below. There are a lot of different tiers to support. But also, while you're down there, just go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, comment down below, because all those sell out different ways also help the channel a ton. And they're so appreciated by me. So thank you guys so much for checking out all those different sources. But guys, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching this one. I hope it was good. I hope I didn't ramble too much, but I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.